baby bust. And we released these last year, so if you have a big goal in mind and you need a framework and a process, let's talk about the chronic baby bust. I've been hearing a lot in the news. I think there were some articles that actually came out this week in the New York Times that talked about the decline in fertility rates and how young couples like me, I'm engaged to a young woman who, and me and her are trying to have a child now. It's not always a straight line to having a child. I think you kind of sold the idea that it is, that you just have sex without a condom and then a baby appears. But lots of young families and lots of my friends who are trying to have kids have gone for a couple of years trying and struggling to conceive. So much so that after doing this podcast, I started telling some of my friends I actually think it's a good idea to start freezing your eggs, embryos, sperm. Because if it is going to get increasingly harder, then there might need to be medical interventions, IVF, etc., for me and my friends, if we want to have families. But the problem is as well, at like 33 years old, if you look at the data, you're not at your peak necessarily in terms of fertility. You're somewhere coming down the slope as a man, but also as a woman. And so you're kind of fighting time a little bit, it feels like.
Yeah, you are.
And I think my partner feels the same way, that we wish we were told a little bit earlier about family planning. And then I hear these fertility issues that apparently are being caused by toxins and the sort of chemicals in our environment. You have spent a long time thinking, writing, talking about this.
Yes.
I guess the first question is why? Why is a guy that's known for managing billions and billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, talking about fertility and this sort of baby bust?
Well, starting 27 years ago with the foundation, we were committed to start thinking about everything to do with the climate. And you're moving in the right circle then, because the next thing is we started to worry about the cataclysmic decline in insects. I don't know if you're aware of this, but insects appear to have dropped in biomass, the weight of the flying insects, by 50 to 75%.
Really?
In the last 60, 70 years. And E.O. Wilson, the famous Ant-Man, he believed that, nature could handle the loss of humans easily, effortlessly, but it could not handle the loss of insects. That insects are, in a sense, he felt, and his fellow experts, he represented them as thinking the same way, that insects are the bedrock of nature. And if they start to go out of business, then the birds who feed on them and the amphibians, they start to decline, which they have done, also catastrophically. One thing leads to another, and the beetles are no longer recycling the forest floor, and eventually things won't grow, and no one to fertilize the plants, and the damage spreads. And he felt that eventually loss of insects would lead to a more or less complete failure of nature, and we would inherit a planet that was no longer conducive to humans. We noticed that some of the same effects.
Okay, so about insects. You guys probably heard that Bill Gates has been running these programs where he's bioengineering mosquitoes that are sterile, and releasing them into the wild or whatever, into the city population, doesn't matter, in order to decrease the amount of mosquitoes. So they will release these male mosquitoes that are been genetically modified to be sterile, so they're not able to make babies, basically, and so that when they mate with the female mosquitoes, the female mosquitoes wouldn't make babies, for lack of a better word, without being scientifically correct, and that would make the mosquito population decrease, right? And you would think, big deal. Who's even gonna pay him for this, right? But you know why he's doing this? Because Bill Gates is one of the major people that always says that we have too many people, that the world population is too big, and that we need to decrease it. So that makes sense. That makes sense why he's doing that. He wants to get rid of. He's probably just learning, running tests with mosquitoes to see how well that goes, and then he'll move on to bees. I wouldn't be surprised, to kill off the bees, to kill off all the other insects, because apparently insects are incredibly important to human survival. Isn't that interesting? Let's keep listening.
Felt by humans. And a report came out, Shana Swan and Haggai Levine, I think it finished in 2011, and it made the case that sperm count had been dropping, had almost halved since the first reports, academic reports in 1970. So I immediately said, this has the feeling of something that is really important. We got to study the data, and the results came out suggesting that the decline rate was accelerating. The decline rate this year is 2.5% a year. You don't have to be mathematically that literate to realize that a 2.5% decline in your sperm count every year is a disastrous level, a non-sustainable level, right?
How long is that going to take for my sperm to basically not work?
As far as we can tell, our best guess is that in hunter-gatherer days, we had 180 million units per milliliter of sperm. And when the academics came in 1970, it was down to about 100. And today it's 35, okay? Also the quality and the motility, they call it,
motility
had also declined.
The ability
somewhat
of the sperm to
similarly.
swim.
It turns out, luckily for us, that we were over-engineered it. I like to say like a great Victorian bridge. Nature doesn't take any risks, and you have more than you need. And it appears, again, a good guess is about 45 million units is what you need to be able to get pregnant without any difficulty. And that was hit about 15 to 20 years ago. The number of young couples who needed help 15 or 20 years ago was nil, basically. And for this reason, that none of them had a chronic lack of sperm count, in round numbers. And now, the World Health, it says it's about 17%. Okay, 17% of young couples could use some help today. Which means that instead of, just trying for a week or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, you're trying for months and months. And everybody knows people now who fall in that category, which is exactly what you would expect if you've gone from 0 to 17%. But this is the killer. Shana Swan and my colleague and I kind of thought about this thing separately and independently, and we worked out, doesn't take a great brain, that in 20 to 25 years, the average young couple will need help. I mean, this is tomorrow. This is not 200 years from now. In 20 to 25 years, the average young couple will need help getting pregnant.
Dr. Swan's projection indicates that if the current rate of decline continues unchecked, the medium male sperm count is on track to hit 0 by 2045.
Yeah. That means the median couple is not going to have children without a lot of help.
It means half the male population will have 0 viable sperm, and the remaining half will be right on the edge of functional infertility.
A few of them will still have plenty.
Crazy.
And maybe 10% who are really perfectly in decent condition. Because there's a huge distribution range today. There are people today who still have...
So pretty much like, what, our children? What year did he say? Our children will have serious trouble having children? Or the children of their children? It's absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. I'm thinking, what makes sense, they're talking about freezing your sperm and freezing your eggs and all of that stuff, is it actually makes sense. I know this sounds kind of weird probably, but it makes sense for us that still have some to spare, if you will, to freeze like our sperm and our eggs for our children. Like if you're a guy, you'd freeze your sperm, and then your son or your grandson can actually use your sperm to have babies. Or if you're a girl, you freeze your eggs, and then your daughter or your granddaughter would use your eggs to be able to get pregnant. Because you can use somebody else's sperm. And it's funny because I've seen a lot of on Facebook there's advertisement for sperm, sperm. They pay you for sperm. They buy your sperm. I know that's kind of weird, and I was wondering what the hell do they do with that. But apparently they're probably already now storing it for the future, freezing it for the future, and people are already having trouble, so they're using it for other people that want to get pregnant. But wouldn't it make much more sense if, say, if your grandchild is not able to have, doesn't have any more sperm left of their own, to use the sperm of their grandparents? It would still be like their own, their own genetics, their own, gene, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Because it's crazy. Like when people even adopt children and all that, you never know what you're getting. Like what their upbringing was. It's weird. It's even spiritual. I believe it's what their generational curses are and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different things going on with that. But it'd still be like your bloodline. It'll still be like your family thing. It would still, you know what I'm saying? To me, that makes sense. Let's keep listening and see what else they're talking about.
200 million, better than the hunter-gatherers. But it's...
And what is causing this? And how do we stop it?
Shana would say the environment around you of mainly plastics. Plastics are leaching toxins, and the particles of plastics you have in your brain and in your body, which we now know is quite substantial, are also leaching toxins. And these toxins are what they call endocrine disruptors. They mess with your hormones. You should expect them to lower your fertility. And yet, the people who specialize in fertility problems and write books about it, none of them mention toxicity. They mention the 100 perfectly solid reasons why people are choosing to have fewer children.
Endocrine disrupting chemicals like phthalates, which are found in cosmetics, shampoos, food packaging, etc. They actively lower testosterone production in male fetuses during the first trimester, permanently stunting reproductive capacity before birth.
Yes.
BPAs, which are what they call biphosphonates.
Yes, something like that.
Used to make plastics hard, line tin cans, and coat thermal store receipts. They are synthetic estrogens. They flood the male body with female hormone signals, crashing sperm count and motility. PFAs, forever chemicals, used in non-stick pans, Teflons, waterproof rain jackets, and stain-resistant carpets. They break down in nature, accumulate in human blood, and are directly linked to lower sperm volume. And then the microplastics you talked about, the Trojan horse, one of the shocking things that I read was that it's been discovered that they are physically embedded in human placentas.
Yes, isn't that amazing?
Breast milk and human testicles. And there was a major study I think we all heard about in 2024 that found microplastics in 100% of human testicular tissues tested. 100%. And lastly, biological stresses. So me and you being sat down on these chairs heats our testicles to a point where the sperms die. Heated car seats, hot laptops, they actively cook the sperm. And lastly,
your cell
obesity.
Phones.
Yes.
In your pocket.
And of course, smoking you somehow slipped through the net.
Yeah.
But there is a whole other branch, pesticides on your food. Now, if you'll give me time.
Okay, here's another theory of my own theory about plastics has to do with clothing. Have you noticed how much clothing nowadays is all made out of bullshit plastic? It's all polyester. It's all polyester. It's to try and find 100% cotton socks. You have to, I don't know, do like an active investigation to find some that are 100% cotton socks nowadays, right? Clothing, shirts, regular t-shirts. Try and find 100% cotton stuff anymore. If you find it, it's more expensive. It's all of it has now. It's a lot. Most clothing is like made out. You know that they're adding polyester everywhere. Even the good quality stuff. Shoes, another big thing. Try to find dress shoes or even tennis shoes, whatever shoes in general. It used to be all leather, right? 100% leather, 100% leather with some metal nails, and even soles were made out of leather. Now it's all kinds of glue that glues the soles to the shoe. So when you sweat, when your feet sweat, I bet you all that glue that has been used in chemicals, it just seeps right into your sweaty feet. And shoes are made, even dress shoes. You gotta go to Italy nowadays to go buy some real leather dress shoes, like church shoes. You look at, you used to be able to buy leather shoes like it's no big deal. Now you gotta pay $1.5 billion for some 100% leather shoes. Even what's even crazy, like I like to buy those boots, like cowboy boots, like chobote, cowboy boots, because they're usually pretty strong. Because another problem with shoes nowadays, you get them wet and the soles fall right off. Because it used to be that shoes were always, they were sewn through with a string. The top part of the shoe was sewn to the soles, so they stayed together forever. There's no reason why a shoe can last you your whole entire life. If it's made out of leather, I don't see why not. But now it's they barely put some glue so that it falls off. So I like those, cowboy or whatever you want to call it, country shoe, boots. And they're almost always made out of real leather. Wonderful, right? But then guess what? Then they make it convenient, because a lot of people use them for work, and they put this special liner that's made strictly out of plastic polyester bullcrap, because some workplaces require like heat protection. So you'll get a perfectly leather shoe. What the hell is the point of buying a leather boot if it's lined with plastic polyester lining? That's just stupid, So when I do buy those, I try to find them that has nothing in there for a lining except the leather itself, So that's So shoes, it's now it's all plastic, and the glue that they use to put the shoes together. So that's another thing. And then water bottles and all of that stuff. They talk about that. But another interesting thing that I've also noticed lately, bedding. Your bedding, like your sheets and pillowcases. You gotta look super crazy hard when you go to like average places like Walmart, whatever, and you look at the labels. It's all polyester. It's all some kind of microfiber. They call it now fancy microfiber. It's they're giving it fancy names now. Microfiber, that's a big one. This is some called microfiber, but all it is plastic. It's all plastic. It's all plastic. It's because it's easier to wash. It's like they were talking about carpets that are stain resistant. So they're advertising all of that stuff is stain resistant and wrinkle free. Like all your Express shirts and all of that stuff. It's all made out of that plastic. Polyester, and it goes on your body, because the way that they make it is that they grind it down to real small particles, and then they make strings out of it, whatever, to make the clothing, whatever how they make it. And so it's so microscopic that it gets into your body. So the bedding, it's like now whenever I go buy like some sheets, I make sure it's 100% cotton. You got to make sure it's 100% cotton, and cotton is going away. It's getting a lot more expensive. You can see that 100% cotton bedding is a lot more expensive, and you have to look for it. You have to go to some better store like Macy's or whatever to find bedding that's made out of 100% cotton. So leather's going away because and it's all being done. It's all being done by people that want to decrease the population. It's all being done very secretly and cleverly. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but all the green green movements, all the climate change movements, it's all they are all funded by people and places like Bill Gates, because that's their idea. That's the evil plan. So they'll say, "Wow, in order to have leather, you have to kill the cows, you have to kill the animals." So so they're pushing so that so the leather becomes less available, more expensive, because they want people to not reproduce. They want population to decrease, in order for them to be able to control them. Because you can't control the amount of people that are out in the world right now. In a million, you'll always get at least one Paul. I'm joking. My name is Paul. At least one Paul that will not sit down and take it and just accept the abuse of the government and abuse of rights and all of that. So every 1,000 people, you'll find at least one Paul. But if you got the less people you have, the less Pauls you'll find, and all the homosexual movements and all the feminizing of men, it's all directed in for that, to decrease the population, because gay people cannot make a baby. Sorry if I offend anybody, but that's what it is. It's all directed into decreasing the population. Making men all feminine and all of this stuff. So yeah, it's all the plastics in anything you put on your body. You got to think about socks, shirts, watches, even like watches, like the sport watches. Used to be watches used to always have a leather strap, leather and metal. Now anything, all the watches, whatever, you got the Apple Watch, you got all these other watches, it's all plastic, it's all silicone. Silicone's another big thing. They're making it I'm not going to get into that, but all the plastic that goes, if you think about other things that are plastic and rubber, that go into different places and on different things. So never thought about that. That one just came to me now. That's a little funny. Let's keep going.
I'll tell you about these two little studies. They're very small, and you might ignore them, except they were done by Harvard and Mass General, which is a candidate for the best hospital in America. And they had a clinic for people having problem getting pregnant, and they ran it out of that. They had 180 men, and they got them to self-report on what they were eating. Were they eating the dirty dozen? Were they eating melons and bananas that have lots of protein? At the end of 6 months, the guys who reported to eat the least bad versus the quarter that ate the worst, there was a doubling of sperm count. Can you believe it? At the top category, the more fruit and veggies you ate, the better your sperm count. In the bottom quartile, the more they ate, the worse their sperm count. It was a dramatic result, but 2-to-1 between the top and the bottom. And then 2 years later, they did a very similar study with women who were having trouble. And at the end of their 9 months of self-reporting, the ones who ate the least badly had 68% successful live births, bearing in mind this was a fertility clinic, and the bottom quartile, 38%. So once again, nearly double. I mean, and it's life and death. I mean, these are really important. And this was only based on what they ate.
See, it is based on what you eat. The food has gotten so expensive that an average person, you ask an average person, ask them when the last time they ate, not an average maybe person, but yeah, even average. How often do they buy themselves strawberries and blueberries and raspberries and fruit? I don't know, the last time you checked the prices on fruit, it's nuts. It's absolutely crazy. So people can't even afford to eat fruit and vegetables. They end up buying all the bullshit and they eat all this food that's bad for you, and they're planning for more of it. Mr. Joe Biden, he promised us that we were going to have a famine, that we were going to have food shortages. He promised on that. And, I'm sure that he's set a lot of things in motion. So, and with the whole Iranian Strait of Hormuz being closed, that causes fertilizer shortages, because a lot of it comes from there. It's made out of products that are made, that come out of the ground in Iran. So that causes food shortages, because the fertilizer is used for fruits, vegetables, and all that stuff. And even in Ukraine, this is so funny, because when I was a kid, we used to, we grew our own food, potatoes, carrots, whatever, all that stuff. So you planted it, it grew, you were good to go. Nowadays, first of all, a lot of people move to the city. They don't do that anymore. We used to have our own cows and all that stuff. So they made it unprofitable to have a farm, to grow your own food. So people just get a job and they buy the food from stores, which is often which is often fertilized and sprayed with all kind of chemicals. It's no longer like what you used to get. The only thing you put on there is some cow dung, your natural fertilizer. So now instead of growing your own in Ukraine, this is huge. Instead of growing your own, now you're buying processed foods from the store. And they even made it difficult, because we used to sell our own stuff at the market. What we grew, we took it to the market, milk and milk products, sour cream and all that. In Ukraine, they made it impossible to sell your own stuff. They don't allow it. They require all kinds of licenses. It's all in the name of safety. People were selling things at the market for centuries, and now all of a sudden that's an issue, and now all of a sudden that's it's dangerous. Now all of a sudden it's danger to the society, the people's health, all of a sudden, and they got to regulate it, and basically regulate it to death, so that it stops happening completely. So people no longer grow their own stuff and have their own milk, because it's at least they were able to get some money out of it. So they were completely self-sustained. They didn't need a job. They sold some of their own stuff, they ate some of their own stuff, and then for the money they got, they could buy whatever sugar, salt they needed, and they were good. Now they have to go to work, and now they gotta behave like their employer tells them, and do what their employer says, and they have to shut up and stay down, because now they're dependent on that money from their employer. And that's the same thing with self-employment and having your own business nowadays. They've made it super impossible. They're making it more and more difficult in America. They've wiped out a lot of small businesses during COVID, because when you're self-employed, you can still do what you want, say what you want, and behave according to the rights and liberties that you have. But the minute you're working at some kind of factory, now you have to adhere to all kinds of weird agendas, and then you're dependent on that income, so you have to shut up and stay down. So, but another thing I missed saying is, you used to be able to plant something, and it grew. It was just fine, without even having to spray with any chemicals, right? Nowadays, you try to plant something in Ukraine, and shit won't grow unless you put some Chinese-made fertilizer on it. Did you know that? Even try to have a garden right now, even in the U.S. Try to go grow some shit right now. That stuff don't grow unless you spray it with God knows what, because there's all kinds of weird insects. There are all kinds of diseases, even orange trees. Man, not even long ago, you used to drive around the neighborhood, you got oranges, beautiful oranges growing in people's yards. Beautiful, everything was beautiful. Now, I have a couple of citrus trees at home. They'll bloom, they'll start, then something happens, they fall off, some kind of disease hits them, they just won't never make it to ripe stage. You can't even, and a while ago they had some kind of major disease with the citrus trees. It wiped out almost all of the Florida citrus market, the farms. Now it all comes from somewhere else. What do you think? How do you think that is? I'll go into my conspiracy theory mode. It's because they spray all kinds of stuff, released all kinds of insects, released all kinds of diseases, and unless you spray it with their own antidote, they won't grow. Of course, if you allow a Chinese hot balloon that could fit 7 school buses inside of it to fly through Canada and from one end to another end of the entire United States continent, and you don't shoot it down? What could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? 7 school buses could fit in there. You could fit a whole Noah's Ark inside of that inside of that balloon that they permitted during Biden administration to cross our nation without shooting it down. That is treason. That is absolute treason. Everybody's already forgot about it. Nobody cares. They could have had any kind of disease that affects the plants, agriculture in it that they could have released. Not could have. I'm going to say that they did, guaranteed. All kinds of infertility things that cause infertility. All kinds of bugs that could have been released that are invasive. All kinds of invasive species and all kinds of bugs that eat agricultural products. It's easy. And then if you still want to make it, you gotta buy their antidote. They create the virus and then they create the antidote. Same thing as they did with COVID, of course. They created the virus and then created the antidote, And the antidote allows you to live, but it won't let you have any babies later on. So, yep. Very interesting stuff. Let's see what else is on here. I think I have to go bake some bagels now. I'll be back. I'll put this on pause.